And we are live. I appreciate you guys coming. I think this is going to be a little bit of a shorter one, shorter than usual. It's only going to be about 30 minutes instead of the normal hour. And also, I'm doing this solo, just me this time. So, like I said, I appreciate you coming. We're just talking to guests today. And the first guest I have on the list is Sully. So let me unmute. There we go. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
So how's it going? We have not talked before, have we?
We've talked in text, but
Okay,
not
not on the
voice.
podcast, right?
Yeah.
So, like, what religion did you grow up as? Are you still religious, or?
Well, I grew up as Methodist, non-practicing Christian, and now I'm a Quaker, actually.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, did you happen to see my Quaker video before the Quakers filed a suit against me or whatever?
Yeah, I actually did.
So what did you think of it? I heard bad things from other Quakers. Did you feel like I got anything wrong or anything like that?
I mean, I there were some nuances that you kind of missed, but at the
Okay.
same time, it's like a short overview video. It was
Okay.
well enough.
Well, I figure like there were a couple of like blatant errors in it. So for example, I think in that video I said that Richard Nixon started the Vietnam War or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but it's not actually true. LBJ did. So there are a couple of little errors like that. And then, of course, there are some things, some complaints I got from Quakers about doctrine and things. So I figure what I'm going to do is go back and modify that video and fix some mistakes and then re upload. We'll see.
All right.
So,
Yeah, that'd be
anyways,
cool.
yeah, tell me about. So, you grew up Methodist, and now you're a Quaker. Did your family wasn't like super crazy about pushing it down your throat or anything?
No, my dad was an atheist and my
Okay.
mom was non-practicing Protestant. She believed that churches were a scam,
Hmm.
which for a lot is not necessarily untrue.
Right. Very
So
interesting.
it was more my grandmother who was very religious, and now she's with the Church of Christ instead of
Ooh,
Methodist. So
really? So, what's
yeah.
like? What kind of changes have you seen? How long's she been in it? A long time, or?
Oh, she's only been in it for about 2 to 3 years,
Hmm.
and they do a lot of stuff now. My dad even jokes that she's in a cult.
Oh yeah, totally. I'm sure. Well, for those of you who have not seen my stuff on Church of Christ, I work with somebody. He's a friend of mine who grew up Church of Christ, and he's just now starting to realize like just how messed up that whole thing was, and how damaging it is. So totally on board. And actually, interestingly enough, I have some stuff scheduled, like another podcast and another Telltale video all about them. So, anyway, so you say your grandmother turned Church of Christ, and your parents weren't like super crazy about religion growing up. So,
Yeah.
how'd you find yourself in Quakerism or whatever you'd call it?
I just kind of had like a spiritual renewal where I just kind of wanted to have like I wanted to I kind of had the belief in a religion, but I wanted something that was non-dogmatic. And
Sure,
Quakers are strictly anti-dogma and anti-creed, so it just kind of fit in at the time. And
sure,
I
sure.
became more
Okay.
involved as the time went on.
Hmm. Well, that's pretty cool. I actually went to the Secular Student Alliance conference, annual conference last week, which is why I missed the podcast. But yeah, I met a Quaker there. Really, really nice guy, and he was wearing a shirt that said "Free Thinker" and stuff. I didn't
Yeah.
realize like just how many Quakers are kind of atheist, at least partially atheist. That's really
I,
interesting.
at my meeting, we actually have a monthly meeting of non-theism that meets, and they discuss actual matters and ideas that pertain to atheism and non-theism in Quakerism and abroad.
Very cool. So, do you consider yourself atheist, or are you
I
kind of
consider
religious? Or?
myself more along the lines of just agnostic, leaning
Mm,
theist.
okay.
I take a more naturalistic view, but at the same time, I don't deny anything as well.
Okay. So you're saying that it's possible that God exists, but you just don't really know yet, that kind of thing, or
Kinda, yeah.
okay, that's
I attend the
interesting.
meeting.
Say again.
I do attend the non-theist meetings though
Oh,
when I
okay.
can.
Well, that's pretty cool. That sounds really interesting. So, are there any kind of other like interesting little like tidbits of information you can give us about the Quakers? Like, is there anything that I maybe got wrong in the video that you wanted to correct, or any kind of anything
It's
you wanted
been
to talk
so
about?
it's been so long since I've seen the video that I honestly cannot go down and correct
Yeah,
much.
most of my viewers
Um,
probably haven't seen much of it either because it's been off my channel for so long now. But
I'm a part of the FGC, which is the French General Conference,
mm,
because you know that we're a very divided bunch,
mm-hmm,
and we're the probably the most liberal branch.
mm.
And
The most liberal branch, like liberal in what ways? Just like atheist meeting or non-theist meetings and that kind of thing.
we we're liberal in that we have we're liberal Quakerism, and in Quakerism that means that we spawned from what's called the Hicksite movement,
Okay.
which were Quakers that were we denied biblical infallibility in favor of divine inspiration.
Okay.
So we
So
don't look at so we don't look at the Bible as infallible, and we put more focus on personal experience
okay.
rather than doctrine.
Very interesting. That's pretty cool. I bet you guys. Do you think that they get any kind of hate from like Quakers that are a little more hardline about it, or?
I mean, there's conflict. In fact, for the first couple of years after it's branching off from traditional Quakerism,
Mm.
they both tried to deny that the other even existed.
Oh, really?
But we've kind of arrived at a we're nice to each other now. There's probably some that don't like each other, but
Sure, sure. Well, that's pretty fascinating. So let me ask you this then. What happens when. So you said you attend a non theist service there, right? What do you do when you
well,
walk in?
well, I attend the monthly meeting. The actual service itself is traditional liberal Christianity Quakerism.
Okay. So they believe in like Jesus died on the cross and all that other stuff, right? Or am I.
Uh, I would say the majority probably do.
Okay. So what happens when you walk in? Like not to the non-theist one necessarily, but just into any old service. What do they do? What's kind of the process you go through when you walk in? Like when I was Jehovah's Witness, we'd walk into the Kingdom Hall, we'd walk around for 10, 15 minutes before it started and chit-chat with people, and then we'd all sit down, we'd say a prayer, then sing a song, or maybe it was the other way around. Maybe we'd sing a song and then say a prayer. Then they do the sermon where somebody stands up there and talks. Then we'd sing and pray, and it was over. Is that a similar kind of setup for
Um,
Quakers, or no?
well, we have a determined time where the service starts.
Okay.
If you arrive early, they do some hymn singing and meet and greet.
Hmm.
But when the service actually starts, you go into a room. My congregation's like this big square room, and we all sit in a circle, and we sit in silence for the hour. You mentioned that in the actual video. I do
Right.
remember that.
Yep.
And you mentioned that when people are led to speak, whether it be by God or inspiration or so on, they get up and they speak.
Right.
And it's
Okay.
like that for a whole hour. And then we have what's called a clerk who ends the meeting, makes announcements. We'll greet new members, or we'll make announcements, and so on and so
That's
forth.
pretty cool. So you just sit in silence for that hour, basically, where Jehovah's Witnesses may be kind of talking about, I don't know, there'd be a guy up at the front, like, talking about God and stuff.
Yeah, and there are pastoral meetings for Quakers. Like there are Quakers that have actual pastors and priests. Well,
Right.
not priests, but most meetings with the FGC don't have them.
Got you. So, one more thing I wanted to ask you, and then I'm gonna move on because we've been talking for a while, surprisingly. But so when you said you grew up Methodist, it was pretty liberal, right? Like there wasn't any like they didn't give a shit about anything. They didn't care. You just go or you don't go, love God or whatever, and just move
Not
on with your life. Or
not mine. I actually grew up in a more conservative Methodist
oh, okay.
environment.
Hmm.
The pastor, because I had two pastors. There was one that left when I was younger, and
Mm.
we got a new one. The new one was actually much more liberal and everything, but the church itself, like with the Sunday school and
Yeah.
the congregation, like they were more conservative. I remember one
Hmm.
woman, I was trying to like hint that I may have been gay, and she said, "Well, there was a time back when people just
Uh
wouldn't
oh.
talk about that, and everyone
Oh.
was happier."
Oh wow, man.
I know.
God, these people. Okay, so it was a little bit conservative then.
Yeah,
That's
just a little bit.
crazy. Well, that's interesting. I appreciate you coming on and talking to me. I think I'm gonna move on to the next person, but thanks again.
All right, sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
So that is very interesting. I've mentioned this before, but Alpha Force Zero, or my daughter Kylie, she goes to a Methodist church, and there is something of a spread of beliefs in that church. So they're not 100% liberal. Some of them are hardline conservative Christians. And some Methodist like branches or sects or churches or whatever, some of those get really extreme. Like the YouTuber Objectively Dan, he's a friend of mine. He was converted out of Christianity by street epistemology by Anthony Magnabosco, but he was a conservative, hardline Methodist for many years, for his whole life, basically. And it's just so. I mean, I know that Methodists aren't completely like liberal generally, but this church that Kylie goes to is reasonably liberal. Now there is a neighbor basically of Kylie's great grandparents. Her great grandparents are pretty liberal Methodists, but their neighbor, she is a hard line conservative extremist, and she goes to that church too. Like she voted for Trump, but I mean, I'm not saying that that's an extremist thing to do. She would have voted for any Republican that had been in, regardless of who was running or anything. She just hates any politician that isn't Republican, basically. And she hates gay people. She hates people in general. It's just crazy. It's extremist. So it does exist out there. But anyway, okay. Let's see. The next person I wanted to speak with was. Hang on one second. Okay. Next person was Jupiter Jones. Let's see here. The Jays. Unmute. Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. How are things going? Pretty well, or?
Things are going all right.
That's good to hear. So, what religion were you originally? Are you still religious, or?
I actually was not raised religiously.
Okay.
My parents are religious, but I am not.
Okay, interesting. How did that come about? Like, did you?
It's very kind of weird to describe. Basically, my parents didn't really bring up religion while they were raising me. I mean, I've been to a church a couple times, but my dad never really liked churches. There's always something about them taking his money or something.
I can understand that. That's fascinating. So they are religious, like very religious, I guess, right? But you aren't?
I wouldn't say very religious. They still don't go to church.
Okay.
But their religious views have become more intense now that I'm an adult, or I'm just noticing them more.
Okay.
I did try to kind of find religion at one point, and it just never ever stuck. And the only thing that I even halfway took seriously was like witchcraft.
Oh, interesting. So, are you like a Satanist or anything, or Wiccan, or
No, no,
no? Just kind of played around with the idea for a while.
I just found that I just could not stick with religion at all. It just
Hmm.
something just would not gel right in my
Yeah,
head.
I can understand that. And really, ultimately, I think that's lucky that you weren't like really raised in an extremist kind of environment. So that's pretty good because not all of us, have the opportunity to be raised in an environment like that. So, what got you interested in like atheist channels or channels like mine? What drew you to this community?
Uh, YouTube's have
Right.
recommended your channel to me.
Wow, that's interesting. That's pretty
I
cool.
have I have no idea why it did, and I was like, well, okay, let's just see what this is about.
Right. That's pretty cool. I'm glad you're here. Yeah, YouTube's been pushing my channel out a lot lately. And actually, I just finished a science video about how YouTube recommends videos and channels to people and stuff, like all about the artificial intelligences it uses and stuff like that. It hasn't been released yet. It comes out in a couple of days. But it's a really interesting watch, and it could probably be useful for like aspiring creators, content creators or something. So anyway, just thought that was an interesting little thing. Well, that's pretty. You're still with me, aren't you?
I'm still with you.
Okay. Well, that is pretty interesting. So how far did you go with witchcraft? I kind of got off of the
I said
topic there.
witchcraft. I meant Wicca, but
Wicca,
same
right?
thing.
Okay.
I was also looking at magic and stuff. I bought like a bunch of books, and just like after a while, I'm like, none of this lines up with each other. Nobody agrees. What the hell is this crap?
Right. So I get like you don't really believe that it's like that it's true or that it does anything, I guess. Is that
I
accurate?
think it does anything. I mean, my whole idea is that there may or may not be some higher order being out there, but in all likelihood, if they messed around with humanity, they're done and bored and gone.
Sure. Very interesting. So I assume you were into this whole thing for what, probably a year or something like that, just a real short time.
Yeah, about a year, maybe two. I mean, I was also at the time I was really anti-Christian.
Oh yeah, pretty upset about like Christianity. What drove you to that point, you think?
Oh, I just knew a bunch of kids that were complete and total, well, assholes.
Yeah, I hear you. I know
I
exactly
mean,
what you mean.
and they were religiously inclined, extremely so. When the preacher's kids moved into our neighborhood after their house got destroyed by a tornado, who did I have harassing me for not going to church?
Yeah, I know what you mean. That kind of thing does get frustrating. I don't like a lot of things about how religious people act sometimes, and it's kind of inspired by the religion itself. Like Jehovah's Witnesses would go down to Louisiana, New Orleans. Oh God, I pronounce that terribly. New Orleans, and help rebuild, but they'd only do it for other Jehovah's Witnesses. And that's just wrong to me. That's like tribalism to the core, you know. And that's what bothers me so much about religion. It's very divisive and very tribalistic and inspires hate generally. You know, it will take a good person and make them do bad things. So
Yeah, and I was also kind of turned off because they would, there's always these with AM radio channels out there that a lot of these Christian, a lot of these really religious people listen to.
yeah.
And they are bug fuck insane.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for cussing.
Oh no, it's fine. You can swear.
They like again, back when I was a lot younger and those preacher kids were messing with me, they were, because I was into Pokemon. And you know what they said? The preacher radio said that the Pokemon cards are the devil, and
Yep.
I can't remember all of what they said, but that was the gist of it.
Yep. I know exactly what you mean. I heard similar things, but interestingly enough, I actually kind of escaped the whole anti-Pokemon thing because, like, everybody in my congregation was playing it. So, I mean, even elders, kids, and stuff. So, my parents felt like Pokemon was wrong to play, but what could they say if everybody in the congregation was playing it and the elders thought it was okay to play,
Well,
so.
It wasn't just Pokemon that they did. Every time something new came out, there'd be this radio station going out where the preacher would say, so and so, this is how it relates to being from the devil. Or
Oh, yeah.
Just scaremongering.
Yep.
That's really what it was.
Yep. I know.
Of course, the great irony now is that in my job, I inspect fire alarms, and a lot of the places I inspect are churches.
Really?
I go to all sorts of churches in Memphis and the surrounding areas. My company does the fire alarm inspections and I think we also now do the fire extinguishers for Bellevue Baptist Church, which is this big mega church in Memphis.
Oh, that's fascinating. Tennessee, huh? That's a pretty cool little area. I don't live too far from there.
Avoid Memphis.
Right.
Avoid it.
I actually have historically gone toward Nashville. But yeah, I live between 6 and 10 hours away. Trying not to place my position too accurately. But anyways, I am a little bit short on time. I wish we had more time to talk, but I think I'm going to move on to one final person. I appreciate you coming on and talking to me, though.
No problem. Have a good one.
You too. Yeah, that's interesting. In fact, I'm going to be extremely careful about how much I say here, but so I'm a software engineer. People know that. Most people know that. I also have done things like I've hosted websites and done server administration, things like that. And I do some server administration work for a major religious group. They don't know anything about my religious past or anything like that. But I imagine if they did know, then they would fire me. So that's one of the main reasons why I'm anonymous right now, because I don't want my name to just pop up when searched in Google. Like, I don't want my real name to pop up if you type in, or I don't want Telltale to pop up when you type my real name in or whatever. So it's kind of a protection for my job. Aside from that, though, they're a small client. Like, I don't make that much money from them. Ultimately, it's a really small amount, so it'd probably be okay if they did find out. I just don't want it to like ruin my career or something. Anyway, there was one more person I wanted to speak with. And actually next Sunday, next podcast, I'm hoping to just do guests the whole time. So maybe we can knock this list down a little bit, get everybody a chance to talk to me. So let's see. Ghost Surfer? Are you there? Can you hear me?
Actually, I can hear you.
Hey, how's it going?
Well, I'm here. I'm still above the grass, so that's a bonus always.
That is a bonus. So tell me, what religion were you growing up? You're not still religious, are you?
Most people would consider me not religious at all. And if I told you my entire life story, considering I'm like 54 years old, we'd be here till midnight.
Right.
So my parents were Jewish. My mother was Greek Jew. My father was from Israel.
Oh, wow. So a lot of Jewish blood in you then.
Yeah, they got together. Apparently she got pregnant before they were married. They moved to the United States. I was put up for adoption, and I was adopted by a Mormon family.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you figure that one out. I think those are opposing cultures, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they are in one way or another. That's fascinating. So, how old were you when you were adopted?
Still a baby.
Okay, little, pretty little.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the Mormon church. I became a Mormon priest. I did the whole night, everything.
Yeah.
All the way up until I was 18 years of age. So some of your videos on the Mormon stuff, I watch them, and I've seen a lot of the things you say. And yeah, when a male, a male Mormon reaches the age of 19, he's supposed to go on a mission, blah, blah, blah. And he has to do all this stuff. He has to be a virgin. He has to be yada, 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 the whole 9 yards. Okay, they're the biggest hypocritical bunch of idiots I've ever seen in my life. I'm sorry, I'm an old man, and I'm going to say some things that might have
no. Offenses taken, not given. Go on.
Yeah, I got laid more in the Mormon church between the ages of 15 and 18 than I've been laid in my life.
Really? That's interesting. Did they know? Like, did you go on a mission, or?
Oh, no.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Oh, no. But no, I mean, it's like all of the teenagers were, bumping uglies in the back room every chance they got. I mean, it's just a fact. Everybody did it. It was commonly known. And, all of us, 15, 16, 17, we all know who was sleeping with each other and where and when and what. And then all those guys that were doing everything I was doing, they get up, they put on their jacket, they put on their tie and their white shirt, and they go out to their mission.
Right.
What?
Right.
What? I thought maybe y'all couldn't do that if you're like doing everything you were doing everywhere you did it. And so, yeah,
that is
really
fascinating. Like, that's really interesting, because with Jehovah's Witnesses, it was a little bit different, because they were real serious about it. Like, if there was any word of anybody sleeping with anybody else, they'd all be disfellowshipped, the entire congregation. But yeah, that's so fascinating that the cultures are so different. But I did hear word of like a Jehovah's Witness congregation that was doing wife swapping, apparently. I mean, I don't know how true it is. It's just a rumor. But I've heard a lot of rumors about it. Like they'd trade wives for a month and stuff. I don't know. That seems pretty crazy to me,
You notice I'm keeping my mouth shut about that, but okay.
I did notice that. That's interesting. So
and then being OCD, I admit that, now that I'm my age, I can admit that I'm real OCD. So when I found out who my biological parents were and where I was actually from and why I looked a little different than the rest of my family, I got in touch with both my biological mother and my biological father, spoke with both of them, got to know them a little bit, and found out, the whole, they're Jewish, they're essentially Hebrew, whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
I got into the Hebrew language, and being, like I said, OCD, I went whole hog.
Right.
And I learned Sephardic Hebrew inside out and backwards. Can read it, can read the ancient texts, can read the ancient scriptures, can read everything.
Fascinating.
And so many people, they get mad when you can do that. When you look at them and they start quoting scripture to you, and you're like, it's not really what it says.
They do. I know.
And then they're like, what do you mean? No, that's what I've been taught all my life. No, that's not what the words mean. You have to understand the context of how they were writing those words and what they mean at the time, not what they mean today.
Right.
What they meant at the time they were writing them. So I consider myself more of a literalist. I believe what's written to a point, and what's actually written, not what people have translated it to be.
Fascinating. So would you call yourself a believer then? No? You said earlier no, right?
I believe that there is a high probability that something dicked around with the universe to where intelligent life could be made.
Okay.
As to what that something is, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't pretend to know what it is. And anyone who does, I think, is a blithering idiot.
Right. Okay. I'm with you. That's really interesting.
But I do believe that there's something there somewhere that, somebody went, let's mess around with this. And maybe we're some alien kid science project put up on a shelf and he forgot about. I don't know.
That could be. That is quite true. Generally, I don't make any claims about it either myself. I mean, it's possible. I don't know if you've ever read The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins, but he talks about his scale. I think it's 1 to 7. 1 being you completely believe it to the heart. There's nothing that would ever change your mind. And 7 being you don't believe it at all, and there's nothing that could ever change your mind. And I think he put himself at a 6.9. I would put myself at about a 6 because it's possible that it's real. I haven't seen any evidence for it yet, but if that evidence is forthcoming, I'll believe it without question, you know. Well, I mean, there will be questions, but
well, yeah,
I'll believe it for sure.
Wait a minute. Yeah, it's like, wait a minute, you know, this super loving, wonderful God up there that did this and created man and wants him to do all this wonderful, great, beautiful shit, and then allows all this horrible stuff to happen and tells you, if you don't believe in me, by the way, you're going to burn in hell forever and ever. What? What kind of love is that? Sorry, I don't get it. I mean, I don't get it.
Yeah, so, I'm totally with you. That's really interesting. You know, I appreciate you coming on. And actually, if you want to come on next week too, I could put you on the list again. Do you want to come on next week and chit chat more about this?
I would love to. At the moment, yes, put me on the list. Okay. But if I'm not here, it's really not my fault because, you know, I mean, I have a few medical issues and stuff that I got to take care of. And if I don't, they get pissed at me. You know how they get.
Sure, I can understand. Well, I hope I get to see you next week, so I'll watch for you.
I'll try to be here. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking to me. This is the end of the podcast. Like I said, it's only 30 minutes this time. So thank you all for coming. I will talk to you next week.